The history of Cisco has been in making infrastructure, boxes, but the future of Cisco is really to create this intelligent, intuitive IT infrastructure, and that's where we're going in the future, to really be able to automate, to optimize your IT infrastructure around your business performance. I think that's the most important thing, and AI is going to take us there. We say in AI, he who has the best data wins.
We have so much data. We have deployed over 50 million networks over the last 20 years.
We have domain knowledge across the entire stack. You need a full coverage. You want to bring all the relevant data that's tied to what you're trying to achieve, what the application is trying to achieve. You need to correlate that all together.
One of the most common questions that I've had is, what kind of algorithm are you using? And what we came up with is actually a learning architecture.
IoT devices generate terabytes of data per second, and this number is only going to grow.
And one of the things that we've learned is that instead of doing machine learning in the cloud, it's better to take machine learning and bring it close to where the data is by the IoT devices. This can lead to massive improvements in reliability, scalability, reduced latency, privacy, and security.
Customers need to deploy distributed applications on distributed computing. It's getting too complex for customers to manage it across their data centers at different locations. Use AI is actually using machine learning to do the infrastructure management in an automated way.
Our customers can analyze their own data and understand how to optimize the costs, improve the governance, and be more secure in the new multi-cloud world. And AI can help with exactly those pain points that our customers already have.
We are Cisco. We have control over hardware, software, telemetry. So we know we are short of something, we know how to go and fix to fulfill the gap. We have the brightest luminary in machine learning and deep learning in the industry. With Cortex, we can count of over 60 people who are really shaping ML and AI in Cisco.
By having a group of people watching different area and exchanging that into a forum allows us to track a much broader set of problems and approach to solve those.
So at the end of the day, what customers care about is their business performance. They don't care about spending a lot of time diagnosing where in the IT stack the problem is. Cisco is focused on being able to help them automate all of this, being able to auto-configure, being able to auto-heal ahead of time, being able to predict the problems before they occur, and then ultimately being able to optimize for business performance.
Please welcome back to the stage Senior Director of Technology Strategy at AppDynamics, John Rakowski.
Well, thank you, and welcome to the final two sessions of the day. These last two sessions, I'm really excited about them, because in the first session, we're going to focus on what's next for AppDynamics, what's next in regards to the Cognition Engine, and a deeper look at our roadmap. And then we'll be closing the day out with a fantastic Agents of Transformation panel. Please give a warm round of applause to JF, our CTO for Data Science at AppDynamics.
There was a time I met a girl of a different kind.
Welcome, everybody. Woo! All right. Thank you for being here at the end of the day like this. I was about to actually make a joke and say I was happy that I was actually not the last one between you guys and the booze, but it looks like the party's already started. I'm JF, founder and CTO of Perspica. Perspica was an acquisition by Cisco a couple of years ago that focused on AIOps and on automating anomaly detection, event correlation, and root cause analysis. And I'm happy to say that today that technology has been integrated, and it's now known as the AppDynamics Cognition Engine. So we're going to talk this afternoon about how AI is transforming our industry by bringing automation everywhere in the forefront. 5 years ago when I started Perspica, the AIOps market was a couple hundred millions. But today, that's a real market opportunity, has reached $2.5 billion last year. That's pretty impressive as a growth in a few years. But really, what's much more impressive is actually where it's going. We're expecting the market to reach $11 billion within the next 4 years. So one has to ask himself or herself, why such a rapid growth? What's happening that's causing this transformation or that growth? And that's really because the digital transformation is happening. This is resulting in actually an increase in demand of IT management tools to ensure that the end-to-end application assurance and availability is there to meet the need of the customers. The IT tooling is expected to be the fastest growing application of those AIOps platform. How many of you guys have watched last week or in the last few weeks Game of Thrones on Blockbuster DVDs? Probably none of you guys, right? I certainly not. I streamed it in my hotel room while I was on the road. I really wanted to see the last episode. So the risk of not transforming your business is actually to be left behind and forgotten. Second point where that market is growing is really that as this transformation is happening, we can't be reactive anymore. When the application performance starts impacting the user experience of those applications, your brand recognition is at risk, as well as your customer loyalty. You need to become, or you need to be actually proactive to meet the user experience that's expected by your customers. Would you rather be, on the front page of the Herald, winning a championship, or all over the internet on ZDNet for actually an outage? So recently, to me that's a sad story. Recently, Salesforce had a faulty scripts and operations that brought down their environment, and because of that, the CTO co-founder Parker Harris had to, publicly apologize. Nobody wants to be in that situation. I'm sure none of you wants to be there. Certainly not me. So, AIOps is like it's actually a journey. It's like DevOps, right? It's a journey that requires a change in mindset in order to bring automation in the forefront. The lion's share of that market opportunity is going to be allocated to managed services, AI-based managed services. These firms or these services will help clients create, design, build, deploy, and run their business with this new mindset in the forefront. The AIOps transformation is no longer optional. It is a necessity for every business, all of you guys. So let's take a look at what really is AIOps. So when I think about AIOps, I'm really thinking about the goal. I'm not thinking about the simple definition, which is, applying AI to IT. That's way too simple, right? The goal of AIOps is actually to automate the data center. It's providing autonomous IT system. Just like Julia talked about in the video a few moments ago, it's about providing self-managed environment, systems that auto-configure, auto-heal, systems that predicts problems and optimize the performance of the environment. But when we talk about AIOps, we're not talking about AI. AIOps is really different from AI, in fact. It's the application of AI to IT data. So when we talk about AIOps, we're talking about platforms. We're talking about platforms that is able to ingest data end-to-end to provide complete visibility in your environment in order to gain insights into the performance in order to separate the signals from the noise. Obviously, AIOps platforms use data science, AI, and algorithms in order to automate multiple operations tasks like anomaly detection, event correlation, root cause analysis. In a way, a simple analogy is likened to automating the finding of a needle in the haystack. If we can automate this, there's a lot of benefit that comes out of it. But AI is data hungry, right? AI is as good as the data that feeds it. So providing quality data is going to be very critical to the success of AIOps. It needs cross-domain data, as you see, up there. It's data about the application performance, the end user experience, but it's also data around the infrastructure performance, the networking, security. And all of those IT domains have very specialized types of data, right? Some of them have time series, others have events, some have boats, there's logs, there's topology, call stack, call trace. All of those type of data needs to be understood by the Cognition Engine or by the AI and ML technology. It's quite different to, for example, image processing, where you're looking at an image, right? Here, every type of domain, or every domain have their own specialized types. And Being part of AppD, or AppD and Cisco together, the joint value of this is actually providing a very rich collections of those data sets. Also, we have vast IT and AI domain knowledge. And the combination of all of that expertise is what makes us, in my opinion, best in class to deliver that autonomous vision. So when this morning you've probably learned about the central nervous system, right? This is a vision very similar to the way the human central nervous system is working. We have sensors, eyes, earrings, and all of that stuff, so that, in a way, it's the platform that takes data from all kinds of sensors. And then the brain, or the AI engine in the middle, analyzes or interprets that data in order to orchestrate actions. Some of those can be corrective actions, some of those can be optimization actions, and so on. It's not uncommon that when I go and meet customers, they're telling me, oh, we have like 20, 30, 50 monitoring product or monitoring tools. In this world of shrinking IT budget, the consolidation is absolutely necessary. And AppDynamics started that journey several years ago. First, we started with APM, the monitoring of your application. And then over the recent years, we've added additional capabilities like server visibility or infrastructure visibility. Recently, we've added networking visibility and integration with Cisco. And we're going to be continuing to enhance those type of capability by bringing, for example, security data in the coming years. Unlike some other products that takes only third-party data, being in control of our data at AppD and Cisco has the advantage of providing this quality data I was talking about, which allows us to actually obtain much better analytical results. So let me shift gear a little bit and take a look at how do you realize that vision by looking at our AIOps platform architecture. At the bottom layer of that architecture, looking at the right screen here, at the bottom layer of that architecture, it's actually concerned with the data ingestions from different aspects, from the data lakes, from our own agents, but also to an API. And that API is going to be very critical of the success of an AIOps platform. 5 years ago, when I was starting Perspica, the thing that was really fashionable for developers was the use of containers. Docker was really there. Nobody knew whether it would be Mesos or whichever platform for managing the container would succeed. Kubernetes seems to be the favorite one today. But who could have imagined that within 5 years we would have serverless? I certainly did not think about this, and who knows what we're going to have in a couple of years from now. So that API that I'm talking about is very critical and has a few things that needs to be there in order to meet the future demands of the business. One of it is actually the data model extensibility. It's about adding components to the engine so that whenever the business needs new type of entities, we can actually connect this so that we can analyze it all together. The second piece is actually about transforming and mapping third-party data that's going to be fed through that API in order to transform those unstructured, complex data type I was talking about into structured types that the engine can understand so that it can reason on that data. The top part, or the upper layer, is actually concerned with cross-domain visualization, or unified visualization across the multiple domains. What's key here is that you can have in a single dashboard all the relevant data, providing all the context to the end users and all that visibility that you need. And what allows that is the middle layer, actually, which is the AI and ML layer, or really the AI engine, as I like to call it. And very similar to the way the human brain works, it correlates cross-domain data. So naturally, it does look like it looks at application, which would be in one console, and it would look at maybe infrastructure performance in the other console. In our brain, we connect these things together. That's where the data models of the ingest needs to be connected so that we can then apply reasoning on the complete set of data. If you have blind spot, you won't be able to find root cause analysis, or you won't be able to find the cause of problems if it happens to be there. And so very similar to the way the brain works, the first thing it does is correlates those cross-domain data. Second, it filters out the noise that's coming out of there. There's millions and millions of data points and logs lines that are happening every minute. And then the third part is that it's keeping only the essential contextual information that's going to be needed for triggering actions that are necessary for your environment. That's a slide that typically, takes a lot of time. There's a lot of content. I can talk for hours actually on that slide. I can talk about the different data types, but really what I'm passionate about is those specific capabilities that are enabled by AI and ML. The correlation engine that I talked about can reconcile those data models. That needs to be, it's a fundamental building block of any AIOps platform. You need to be able to take data from one product and another product and correlate it together and analyze it together. And once you're able to do that, you can start learning the patterns of behavior between data types coming from different systems. And with these models that you've trained, using actual real live data, you can start performing anomaly detection so that you can detect performance degradation. Finally, when in the unfortunate event when problems happen like this, that's where you want to trigger automated root cause analysis. And root cause analysis needs to know flow maps. It needs to understand the health of infrastructure. It needs to understand how's the network performing so that you can ultimately analyze where problems, where resources are being constrained while performance is not being delivered. Once you're able to identify that problems, that's when you get into the recommended action. So you want to have an environment that is able to recommend what to do in the case of a specific type of problem. So we're having all kinds of approach looking into this that I won't have the time to talk about it today, but I'm happy to talk about in the networking event later tonight. And finally, the holy grail of AIOps is actually predictive analysis. It's once you're able to have models that understands how all of those metrics and signals works together, machine learning is able to give you to highlight and surface those weak signals that are indicators of performance degradation that is beginning to happen before it actually impacts the end users. And then you can take corrective actions that we've already talked about. The last piece of that architecture is concerned with the APIs to trigger those events that I'm talking about. So, it's basically using, an API to trigger maybe an orchestrator, or it can be actually a system of actions, for example, like running a script, or just opening a WebEx channel for a conversation. The main benefit of all of what I've been talking about when I talk about AIOps are, from my perspective, a reduction in frequency of war rooms. To me, that is the biggest problem we face, when managing IT environment today. And if we can reduce those war rooms, and we can involve only the right people in those war rooms, there's a lot of benefit that comes out of it. First, you might have much less finger pointing. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen this. Hey, it's the network. No, the network's fine. It's the application, vice versa. Right? That happens in pretty much every troubleshooting session that I've been part of. And the other part of that is that as you have less finger pointing and so on, you're starting fostering much more collaborative environment, working environment, which is improving the culture in the enterprise and in our industry. And I'm really passionate about that. Now that we've talked about the vision, let me tell you what we have today, and that actually that CNS vision is already part of the AppDynamics product. Just recently, in our first or initial deployment, we focus on what we deem the most valuable use case. So reducing mean time to repair. I've already mentioned that multiple times, but also taking corrective action when that happens. So this was achieved very rapidly by integrating the Cognition Engine that we had, but also by leveraging our intelligent agents that are doing the flow map, using the built-in correlation engine, and basically the targeted set of actions that's readily available in the product for which some of you guys might be using already. That new Cognition Engine requires zero manual configuration. So if you have the product, by the way, it's in our SaaS, but if you're running the product, you can turn it on any application that's being monitored. And it will automatically start monitoring every metrics that is being monitored for the application. Okay, so that means that everything underneath the business transactions, whether it's the JVM or .NET, whether it's the server infrastructure availability, and all of this will be baseline, but also for every entity, we'll have a correlation model so that we can understand if these entities are behaving properly. And when problems occur, you can automatically correlate all the alerts that I was talking about within the infrastructure with the business transaction performance issue. And this way, you can actually identify root cause analysis. So you've seen probably this morning during the keynote that slide here, the unified visibility, right? We offer complete, from my perspective, a complete, and unified visibility of the entire enterprise stack. Of course, we can add multiple products and platforms, but this is what we see today, and this is what we mean right now by cross-domain. Over time, I was talking about the API will be augmenting, but it won't be augmenting in terms of technology that we support, but more product that we can support their data from. And Tom, will be talking later on about the product roadmap, and he's going to highlight some of those recent and upcoming work that we're doing in the application performance monitoring itself. So let's get back to that use case. That use case that's keeping a lot of you, I'm sure, up at night. In the traditional process, there's a human involved at every step, right? You receive an alert. Somebody needs to triage. Is that a valid alert? Should I run a run book? Should I call for a war room? There's a decision that needs to be made. It takes time. The second phase, well, now if you need a war room or you need to do some investigation, that's the identification phase. In fact, that identification phase usually lasts about 60% of the time. And on top of this, for very critical problems, it takes north of 6-7 hours to actually solve. So that's a lot of time spent and possibly application being down. In fact, Salesforce, 14 hours being down globally, that's a very major problem. And so if you can minimize the human intervention and actually reduce each of those steps and link them together, that yields a very significant benefit by saving times and so on. In fact, about 80% of the problems are caused by human change in the environment. So if you can have, quality database that contains all the information that, all the configuration information, you can much easily apply the fixes and so on. The other thing is that's really close to me is actually when it gets to operation, developers are very often involved there. They're being called to help troubleshooting. In fact, about 50% of developers' time is spent troubleshooting operational problem. To me, that's actually a significant problem because now you've hired the software engineers to work on building application for the business and they end up troubleshooting application as opposed to develop new features. And so if you can shrink that time and give them back 50% of their time, you're significantly improving the business and has sort of a snowball effect because once you give them more time, they end up producing better code, they can test more, and then you have less problem and so on, right? So by starting this automation early yields a lot of significant benefits. So today, our new Cognition Engine, I believe there's a demo booth there where you can go and see it. It has the ability to automatically detect business transaction performance issue. And when that happens, it automatically correlates anomalies that are happening in the infrastructure in order to find the most suspicious cause, whether it's a node or an entire tier, for example. Or perhaps it's a backend service, or it's a connectivity issue between some of those tiers. What it does then, by baselining every metric, we're able to pinpoint the performance deviation and find the actual resource that are basically being bottlenecked and isolate those problems. And then once the root cause or once the cause is identified, you can automatically trigger an action. And like I was mentioning earlier, that could be, for example, running a script on a server, or it could be starting a Slack channel on which you'll start discussing what to do about this problem. And once the problem is over, the next step, if you start being more creative and think about what you can do, is you can actually zip those sessions. Many products actually just do that. And over time, you have a collection of discussion about how to solve those problems. Then you can use AI to mine this and create a knowledge base of recommendations so that the next time you see that problem, you've already have a solution that was custom for your environment. You've learned from those sessions. So to bring it full circle, let me just point a couple of things. So we've talked about our CNS vision and the three pillars: visibility, insights, and action. Well, this is really providing visibility here. You know which business transaction have performance issue, which provides you, an idea of the user experience. The second part, it's providing you insights, where to go and look for those problems. And finally, you can respond with some action. this is bringing it literally full circle. Let's move on to our AIOps roadmap. So let's talk a little bit about the future. But before we do that, I'd like to show you something that's close to my heart, which is really the Cognition Engine itself. That's a cluster of that has been deployed in our SaaS for one instance of our Cognition Engine. If you think about it, it's fairly complex application. You can argue they could be more complex. It's an horizontally scalable architecture and blah, blah, blah. But it kind of looks like a haystack from my perspective when I look at it this way. And when there's a problem, sometimes it takes a long time to actually troubleshoot that. And I tend to say, well, it's humanly impossible to find the root cause in real time if you have to do that manually. And that's really where that kind of complexity that we understand is needed. And that's where we focus on root cause analysis really as the first use case. This instance can actually process 40 million metrics, which is pretty much, I think, more than any customers I've met so far. I've worked with very large customer. 40 million metrics per second, for example, in real time, or data points per second in real time is pretty hefty. While it's ingesting all of this, it's able to actually surface all the relevant data and orchestrating autonomous actions to optimize and trigger, and fix problems as they occur. This engine we're constantly improving. We're constantly enhancing, bringing new models. As new type of entities are supported, we need to bring new models. So let's take a look at that AIOps roadmap. So this is about the platform. And when we talk about the platform, I've talked about, for example, visualization. So part of the stuff that we're working on is providing that unified visualization. We already have that, but now we're moving towards persona-driven unified visualization. And also integrated visualization. For example, the view that a network operations wants to see might be different from security operations, or for the IT ops or DevOps. So we understand this, and we're making our visualization much more adapted to the need of today. We've talked about closed loop, right, which is basically that piece in green there, which is basically coming up with root cause and then triggering the actions. Well, just recently, in fact, earlier I think this week, we've announced an integration partnership program that accelerates this part of the roadmap. So we've already have, part of the product, we already have capabilities to trigger action, but we're augmenting and accelerating that by working with partners that focuses on that area. And lastly, the piece in orange, which is all about also machine learning and AI, is around all of those ML services and AI capabilities. And those were the category I was talking about earlier, like anomaly detection, root cause, configuration, and all of this. So for example, type of problems or use case we're looking at, if there's a performance problem that's happening in your environment, is that a problem that's happening only for one server? Or is it all the servers in that cluster that are having the same problem? Can you detect that automatically? And if so, can you fix it automatically? So that's a type of use case. Another one is there any misconfiguration of the product that might be creating performance problem? How can you detect those problems automatically? Or how can you detect the misconfiguration? Another example would be, which BT should I be monitoring, right? There's limitation on how much configuration you can do or you have time to do. And what should be my optimal health role to set up there? So those are the type of problems that AI and ML is helping us. And let me give you some early results and stuff that we're working on right now in our lab. So this first problem is basically it's a very simple problem setup. The business transaction response time is increasing. Therefore, the performance is declining. And then the next question is, well, why is that happening? You can go to a dashboard, take a look at how your tier are doing and so on, and there's some red. And visually, it's quite intuitive. You can find, there's at the top part, there's 4 out of 16 things that are red. Maybe I should look at what's different for these guys. Now gets the tedious part, right? What's the difference between those 4 guys that are misbehaving and the rest of the group? Is it a configuration problem? Is it a networking problem? And so on. Or you go there, it's red, but everything is red, but yet it's still working. It's just slow. It's not unavailable. An unavailability problem is usually quite straightforward to find because things are failing. Slowness is the big problem that we have to address. So today we can quickly answer those questions just by looking at dashboard and digging a little bit further. But tomorrow, by using clustering algorithms and stuff like that on the right KPIs, you can automatically isolate which machine are not part of the group, which ones are behaving differently. And once you're able to do that, then you can get to the next step by stitching together the next algorithm, which is looking at the configuration of the one or those ones that are different from the others. What are those configuration parameters that are quite different? Now think about a cluster that have maybe 40% of the nodes that are incorrect. And now you're trying to find which configuration parameter is different. And you guys know, like, many of those things are long strings with many characters. If you've been working in a troubleshooting war room for multiple hours, it's really, really difficult to try to identify. Now you're starting to write script and so on. Well, that's something that is almost trivial for the right algorithm to do for you. And you can save tons of hours and find the right thing right away. But if it's not a configuration problem, maybe it's a code problem in your application itself. And that's where, today what you would do, you'd take a snapshot of that business transaction that has problem, and you would start tracing it, and you'll find a specific piece of code maybe that's creating a bottleneck. Imagine now what you would like to do is actually look at all the snapshots across all the instances for those business transactions and identify that one line of code that's behaving differently from normal. That's a humanly impossible task, but for ML, that's a task that might take only a few seconds to mine that information. And lastly, one of the things that I think is quite valuable is it's helping configuring the product today. So for instance, we've done some studies with customer data, working with them, obviously, where we look at the data and they were asking us, well, we can support 200 business transactions. Which one should we use, right? Well, by using the default approach, which would be, say, maybe the first 2 segments of the URL, after 200, we would cover maybe 75% of all the traffic. What if instead we use an ML algorithm that actually looks at the frequency of those business transactions being invoked and so on? Well, with 50 patterns, you'd get about 95% of all the traffic. Double the patterns to 100, you cover about 99% of all the traffic. So why do you want to configure 200 BTs if you need really only 99 or 100, right? So first, it's less configuration, but what also it tells you is that AI and ML technologies are able to recommend what's the right configuration for your product, and then what it's going to do is make a suggestion that you can then say, yes, I'd like to do this. And the benefits are to me, very obvious, as you have less configuration time that's needed, and then on top of this, you have much better coverage, so you have full coverage, much better visibility. And then it also can make recommendations of those, setting up those thresholds, which are very difficult. It will tell you, hey, this is what I recommend you to do. And for those BTs that don't fit there, but that's probably the ones that you want to have a health rules and configure manually, because you know that they're not there frequently enough, so you can't even apply machine learning. Because in order to apply machine learning, you need to have enough data of quality. If you're getting a transaction per day on a BT, it's probably not enough to do ML. All right, so lastly, I've been talking for about 30 minutes, so lastly, I would like to, if there's anything I would like you guys to remember, coming out of this session, it's 3 things, those 3 things here. AIOps is no longer a luxury, it's a necessity, especially in the age of digital transformation. The second thing is, if you want to close the loop, automated root cause analysis is the key enabler, and this is what's going to enable that central nervous system vision. And thirdly, one of the reasons why I really wanted to be part of the AppD and Cisco family is that I firmly believe that the rich data sets and expertise that Cisco and AppD has together is making us, or has made us actually the leader in this transformation to deliver autonomous IT system. Thank you for your time and attention, and I look forward to have a drink with you guys afterward.